I found it by accident. It was lying at the bottom of my husband's crossbody bag, wedged between a charger, chewing gum, and business cards. A small key with a tag, a blue plastic label stamped with the name of a New York delivery service. Not our company. Not his client. At first, I thought, maybe he was just dropping something off. Or forgot. But something inside me stirred. It didn't have a shape yet, but it already had weight. I held that key in my palm and felt it grow heavier with every second. He walked into the room, smiled, just like always. I showed him the key. He didn't blink. Said, "It's for the office. There's a storage unit." I nodded. Put it back. But I couldn't let it go. Because it wasn't just a key. It was a hook. It caught on something inside me, on that fine line between trust and intuition we spend years learning to ignore. I remembered how he'd been going to Boston more often. Said it was for meetings, consultations. How he stopped meeting my gaze. How once, when I got sick, he said, "You're a grown woman. You can manage." Back then I thought, he's tired. Now I realized, he had left long before he said it out loud. I held that key and felt the floor beneath me start to shift. Not suddenly, not loudly, like a crack, silent but already spreading. I didn't scream, didn't ask again. I just slipped the key into my purse, next to my wallet, next to myself. Because I knew this wasn't about a storage unit. It was about a door that didn't lead to an office. It led to another life. One he might have been living for a while now. I just hadn't gotten the notification. He said he was going to Boston. Again. I didn't even get the chance to ask why. He was already zipping up his laptop bag, checking tickets, stuffing chargers and pens into his pockets like he was heading to the front lines. I stood by the door pretending everything was fine, kissed him on the cheek, watched him leave, and only after the door clicked shut did I let myself exhale. I can't remember exactly when I started fearing the silence after he left. Not the loneliness, the silence. It rang. It filled the room. And in it, memories began to speak. The ones I used to mute. His distant look, the rapid-fire texting, the way his phone went straight to voicemail after 9. One time, he told me Boston had bad reception. I believed him, because I loved him. But now I looked out the window and heard the voice inside me whisper, "He's not where he says he is." Maybe he hasn't been for a long time. I sat there with a key in my hand, unable to let go. It wasn't just evidence, it was a magnet. Every move I made now led to one thing: finding out, understanding, confirming, or maybe disproving. I opened Google, typed in the name of the delivery service, found the address. New York, not Boston. A residential building. Red brick walls, for stories, a cozy facade. Not a storage unit. Not an office. I closed the laptop. My heart pounded in my throat. I paced the room, repeating to myself, "Wait, don't rush. Maybe you're wrong." But deep down, the decision had already been made. The next morning, I told him I forgot some documents in his car. He didn't object. Handed me the keys like always. I waited for him to leave. Then I stepped outside, flagged a cab, and headed to that address. The New York morning was ordinary, slightly humid, the scent of coffee and cigarettes hanging on the corners. People rushed past, cars honked, pigeons flapped over the sidewalks. But I walked to a different rhythm. Slower. Like someone walking toward a truth they won't return from unchanged. The building looked even more charming than the photo. Flowers on the balcony. Sheer curtains on the second floor. A familiar car in the driveway. That car. I stood across from the door. In my hand, the key. The one from the bag. It was cool, like a blade. Everything inside screamed, "Go back." But my legs wouldn't listen. Because once you've come this far, you don't want to be rescued. You want to know. Even if knowing means destruction. The door was heavy, solid, with a small scratch near the lock, like someone had already tried to get in before. I stood on the landing, my fingers trembling, the key slipping in my hand. Morning light streamed through the glass panel above, and I could see dust sparkling in the air. The city hummed outside, but here, in this square of space before the door, it was so quiet I could hear my heart beating. One turn, one click, and everything would change. I slid the key into the lock. It went in smoothly, like it had always belonged there. I turned it. The lock gave way. The door opened. First, the smell. Not ours. Not his cologne. Not my shampoo. This smelled like lavender, vanilla, and something faintly feminine, unmistakably domestic. I stepped inside. Everything was neat. Not just clean, lived in. On the coat rack, a light gray cardigan. On the floor, small ballet flats. The doormat was spotless, like it had just been washed. I walked slowly, feeling something splinter inside me. Not from shock, but from recognition. This wasn't a hotel. Not a temporary place. It was a home. Someone's real home. On the kitchen table, a cup. A lipstick mark on the rim. Beside it, a plate with a half-eaten croissant. An open newspaper. None of it accidental. I kept walking. In the living room, a soft couch with a throw blanket. And on the shelf, a photo. Him. And a woman. On a picnic. She was smiling. He had his arm around her waist. The curve of his fingers, identical to the way he touched me. But now I saw. That touch didn't belong to me. I stepped closer. They had a dog. A big one. A lab. On its collar, a name he always claimed to hate. I remembered how he'd wince hearing it in movies. And now it was engraved on their dog's tag. I moved toward the bedroom. A double bed. On the pillow, a long dark hair. Not mine. On the nightstand, lotion, perfume, jewelry. All feminine. All familiar. All not mine. I stood in the center of the room, feeling something tighten inside me. Not tears. Not rage. Numbness. Like the world had shifted just 1 millimeter, but enough to no longer belong to me. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even sit. I just stood there, watching as it wasn't my marriage that collapsed, but my belief. In closeness. In being special. In us. This wasn't cheating. This was a parallel life. And I had just walked into it uninvited. But right on time. I was shaking. My body wouldn't respond. My fingers trembled like they were gripping ice. I opened the drawer of the nightstand. I don't even know why. As if I needed to find one thing, just one, that might undo what I had just seen. There were letters. Not from him, to her. Sarah. Sarah Miller. Her name was everywhere. On a medical card, on a box of vitamins, on a pharmacy bag labeled for Sarah. I picked up one envelope. His handwriting. I'd seen it hundreds of times, on birthday cards, post-it notes on the fridge. I love you messages slipped into my bags. But this wasn't for me. In the letter, he called her Sunshine. He wrote how much he missed her, how he counted the days until their next meeting, how he couldn't believe he'd found someone like her. And then phrases I knew. The same words he used with me. The same turns of phrase. The same expressions. I stood there holding the letter and felt the walls stretch, not from horror, but from the realization. He wasn't improvising. He was following a script. And I had been a copy. I found her Instagram. The account was public. Happiness in every photo. Smiling. The dog. Him. Hand in hand. The caption, our favorite Italian restaurant. The same one we went to for our anniversary. The same brooch he gave me for Christmas, now on her coat. I kept scrolling, and each photo felt like a mirror I wasn't allowed to enter. The same car, but in another city. The same throw blanket on the armchair. His voice in a story, laughing, relaxed, alive. And I realized he never lied sloppily. He constructed an architect of a double life. Not a mistake, not a slip, a system, rational, precise. 2 cities, 2 apartments, 2 women, and neither of us knew we were the second. I didn't know who I was anymore. The first? The second? Or just convenient scenery? I closed the phone, put the letters back, stepped out onto the balcony and breathed in. The cold air didn't clear my head, it pierced it. Everything was clear. Everything made sense. There was just no room for me in his life anymore. Only a role, a background prop. Even the dog knew more than I did. I came back home and realized everything looked different now. His pajamas on the chair, a costume. His mug in the kitchen, a prop. His voice, his touch, his "how did you sleep?" lines from a play I no longer believed in. He was home, like always, slightly tired, unbuttoning his cuffs, pouring himself water, asking if I wanted sushi. I looked at him and heard a hum, like there was glass between us. He was in character, flawless, calm. And I was in a new reality where every gesture of his now meant something entirely different. When he looked at me, I felt him looking through me. When he touched my shoulder, I knew those same fingers had embraced someone else. Those same hands had zipped up her dress. Those same lips had whispered words into her ear, words that now sounded like lies. I didn't say a word. No scene. No accusation. I smiled, did the dishes, asked about his trip as if everything was the same. He answered, painted a picture of routine. And I listened like I was reading a script I'd already seen. Only now I knew. In this film, there were 2 actresses, and both thought they were the only one. I started checking. Quietly. Methodically. I checked his GPS history. Routes to that apartment. Not once. Many times. Gas receipts, parking charges, flower shop purchases. It all lined up. He was precise. He had a schedule. He divided time like an accountant. Even the routes never overlapped. He didn't live a double life like a cheater. He lived it like a professional. And I was part of the system. Deceived but integrated. He never mixed up names. Never left clues. Only one key. One stupid, forgotten keychain that brought everything to light. I used to wonder why he didn't notice how I had changed. And then I realized he never truly saw me. He only saw a function, a convenience, a backdrop. I was no longer myself. I was a reflection of his needs. And now, a silence where a storm was building. I didn't know when I'd speak. But I knew this. Silence was no longer submission. It was the pause. Before the truth. He went to Boston again. Business trip, meetings. I'll be back Sunday. Kissed me on the temple, just like always, said, take care, closed the door. I waited until his taxi turned the corner, then picked up the backpack I had packed in advance and called my own cab. I knew the address. I remembered the door code. I rode in silence, the window open, the wind hitting my face, and there was nothing cleansing about it. I didn't feel revenge, just focus. I rehearsed every word in my head, then let them go, because I knew, in there, it would all unfold differently. Sarah didn't answer right away. The door creaked, and there she was, slightly younger, big warm eyes, robe on, mug in hand. She froze. I said my name. She understood immediately. No tears. No shouting. She just let me in. We sat on the same couch. The same blanket. The same scent. I told her, slowly, without drama. Just the facts. She listened. Didn't interrupt. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me photos. Him, cutting lemons in the kitchen. Him, on the beach, holding her hand. Him, in bed, smiling. We opened our calendars. Compared dates. We sat there like two women who had just learned their entire lives were background for someone else's performance. We weren't enemies. We were casualties of the same design. She trembled. I held her wrist, not to comfort her, to connect. So he could no longer divide us. We opened our message histories. We saw how he lied to both of us, identically. Same handwriting, same words. We found receipts, reservations, gifts, invoices. Built a folder. He wrote us the same letters, whispered the same phrases, gave the same rings. We both wore them, and believed we were the only one. We laughed through tears because the absurdity was sharper than the pain. Then we fell silent, for a long time, and suddenly, everything became clear. We didn't want revenge. We wanted facts. We wanted him to see both of us, together. No screaming. No accusations. Just truth. His fear was our goal. Not because we wanted to destroy, but because we were done playing his game. We waited for him in silence. Sarah put on the kettle. I sat by the window. Time moved slowly, like it knew the world was about to shift. He walked in casually, smiling, holding grocery bags. The same gesture, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door, kicking off his shoes, saying, "Baby, I'm home." Only this time, his baby was standing in the other corner.
Me.
He froze. The smile died mid-motion. His eyes flicked to Sarah, then to me, then back to Sarah. His mouth opened, like he wanted to crack a joke, to smooth it over, but the air turned thick. Nothing came out. We said nothing. I handed him the folder. She placed our rings on the table. His face went pale. He started mumbling about stress, being overwhelmed. "You don't understand." We stayed quiet. He started sweating. His hand trembled as he lifted a cup. He said he loved us both. That it just happened. That he never meant to. He talked a lot.
Fast.
Tripping over his words.
And we stayed silent.
Not from fear. From exhaustion. Because everything had already been said, without words. He kept saying it was hard. That he hadn't slept in weeks. That he was trying to find the right moment. And again, I didn't want to hurt you. I watched as the image of him crumbled. As mask after mask fell off. Charisma turned to panic. Confidence to pity. His eyes darted around. He was waiting for a reaction. For a scream. For tears. For something thrown. But we stayed quiet. With each word, he grew smaller. Quieter. Weaker. And then, suddenly, he snapped. "You're both crazy." Looked at us like enemies. Like judges. I smiled. Sarah stood up. He begged us to stay. Said, "Let's talk." But we had already understood. His power came from separation. Now we were united. He couldn't control us anymore. We walked out, without looking back. And he stayed alone.
No masks.
No roles.
No us.
And for the first time in all of this, truly lost. I didn't take anything. Not the bag. Not the jewelry. Not the coat he gave me in Vermont. I left in exactly what I came in, with my phone and a folder in hand. I didn't feel defeated. I felt cleansed. I walked through the streets and the air felt different. Not because the weather had changed, but because there was no more lies stitched into my breath. I rented an apartment by the ocean. Small, bright. The walls smelled like fresh paint. The windows didn't shut completely, but there was something alive in it. I bought myself dishes, one plate at a time. Slept on a mattress on the floor the first week. Not because I didn't have money, but because I didn't want to rush. Everything had to be mine. Chosen. Without his hand. Without his taste. I no longer waited for messages. Didn't stare at the screen. Didn't check the timestamps on his trips. My phone became just a phone. I deleted his number. Erased the photos. Not out of anger. Because I no longer needed to remember. I didn't want fame. I wanted truth. I started hosting meetups.
Online. No masks. No filters.
Women came, watched, stayed silent, then spoke. I heard them. And every time I did, I knew. We're not alone. We just stayed quiet too long. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't afraid he'd see. I knew he was reading. Secretly.
No likes.
No comments.
But he saw.
And maybe for the first time, he understood his silence didn't work. I was no longer a victim. I had become a voice. Not loud.
Real.
And with every word I wrote, I felt it. I didn't just leave. I stepped out. Toward myself. Toward others. Toward freedom. I stand at a new door. It's white, with a matte handle, creaks a little when it opens. By the threshold, my boots. Only mine. On the hook, my coat. Light, dusty blue. The scent of freedom in its folds. In my hand, a key.
One.
No keychain, no duplicates. No strange stories needing explanation. I turn it in the lock and the click sounds like a period. Like the end of a fairy tale where I was just the background for someone else's lines. This is my apartment. My walls. My window, where no one is waiting for excuses, returns, or footsteps that don't belong to me. There's no hidden life here.
No shadows.
Only light. I turn on the lamp.
Put the kettle on.
Wrap myself in a blanket. No one says it's too late. No one disappears with a "see you Monday."
Y sit.
And I hear myself. Not the noise of thoughts. Myself. The one who was drowned out for so long by "you're exaggerating. You're too sensitive. You have to understand." I don't have to. I decided. And now, this door has one lock. And one person who opens it.
Me.
If you're reading this and feel like your story is close to this one, if you're standing at the threshold and don't know whether to turn the key, know this. You're ready. You've already begun. Subscribe to the channel to hear more stories about how truth hurts, but sets you free. We don't break. We break through. And we choose whose door will never open again.